And so while they were hanging out with this lady for several days, I was in there just going crazy with these magazines. And I think it's important to describe what happened to me in that moment. Because of the hungry need in my life for affirmation, for love, attention, and loneliness, when I opened these magazines, it was like I had found the promised land.
Hey, what's up, guys? So today's episode is brought to you by our proud sponsor, Elevated Silence. This is one of my favorite sponsors, not only because Jim Hood is a very dear, close friend of mine. He's been on this podcast several times, but because I am an avid user of this product. As you guys know, I love to go to the range. I love to train civilians and law enforcement. And this is a suppressor that I use each and every time I go to the range. I can tell you this, every time I bring it out, I get nothing but compliments of just how quiet it is. There's people are always looking for these differences in suppressors. They want it lightweight, but with lightweight, it's probably going to be a little bit louder. The heavier the weight, it's going to be quieter. And I think Jim has found the perfect combination of both, which is why I love this suppressor. He makes everything from 22 to 300 Norma. So if you guys are looking for a suppressor for your rifle or pistol, be sure to check Elevated Silence out. Use the code SMS15 to get 15% off. And also he has some awesome merch for these red hats and this red shirt right now. If you purchase it, a percentage of the proceeds goes to the American Suppressor Association, which will defend your rights to be able to use suppressors as you should, as any American should. All right? Thank you, and God bless.
Welcome to Shoot Me Straight. Dave Fields. Eddie is out today. He's heading to somewhere. I think he's going to see a Shane Gillis concert. If I'm Shane Gillis stand-up comedy somewhere. And today I have Steve Coppi. He's a good friend of mine. He has pretty incredible story. Let's start from just like childhood and go through just the first little bit up until you join the military.
Okay. Hey, I'm really grateful to be here today, to be able to talk about these things. It's never easy for me to share my story, but I'm compelled by the Lord in my life to do this, to be helpful to those who have a similar story. So I think the best way to start it for me would be with my first experience that I had in this area, and we're talking about unwanted sexual behavior today in my life. And it started with a neighbor boy across the street. He was probably 14 or 15, and I was like 9. And I had this experience with him that, really freaked me out because I didn't even know what I was witnessing in a sexual realm. And I went to talk to my dad about what had happened. I asked him questions about what had happened, and he got immediately very angry. He called this guy's father and yelled at him on the phone. And when I asked my dad, and I love my dad, he's a very good man, but he didn't have any real tools in this moment to deal with this. He looked at me and says, "We're just never going to talk about this." And so it was.
How come, you think?
I think it's because he didn't have the tools to be able to deal with something like this. And so I think that, I don't know whether it was shame or his upbringing, but he just didn't have the tools. And with him, he just didn't want to talk about it. And so what I learned then and there was just don't talk to Dad about this. So at age 9, I learned not to talk to Dad about this topic. And I think that's a really salient point for all of us as fathers and grandfathers, that shutting off this avenue in a young man's life is a dangerous thing to do. But I think when we don't know what to do, that's what happens. And so what enters in is shame, and then we keep getting these shaming messages. So then we decide not to tell our parents anymore. So that it starts the secrecy right there.
So you say shutting off communication.
Yes.
So them not being able to know, hey, I can go and talk to my parents about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot more than we know.
Yeah.
And it can happen in a simple little moment like that. And now I think it can be recovered. I think you can recover it. I think God can recover anything. So maybe you've made these mistakes. Maybe you haven't been able to be there for your kids in that way, that it wasn't there for me. You could go back and readdress it and try to open the doors again. Now, it just depends. It depends on the age, but you could address it if you if you get the right tools. And that's 70s, what tools were there? And so then going forward, my parents took me on a trip to visit a lady friend of theirs that she had just recently got divorced. And we stayed at her house in Texas. And I was going through a really lonely time. And I think I was like 11 and a half or 12. And I was going through a real lonely time. We had just moved with the military to Omaha, Nebraska, and I had no friends. I was just really sad and just having a tough time. And we stayed at this lady's house, and I stayed in her son. Her son was away to college, and I stayed in his room, and he had a trove of porn magazines in there. And so while they were hanging out with this lady for several days, I was in there just going crazy with these magazines. And I think it's important to describe what happened to me in that moment. Because of the hungry need in my life for affirmation, for love, attention, and loneliness, when I opened these magazines, it was like I had found the promised land. This was not an experience of, oh, that's neat. No, this was, or, ooh, that's disgusting. It was like, oh, I have found the answers. This is the answer right here. And so I think when some young guys, I think, have an experience at that age, they say, well, this is my first exposure to porn, right? And they said it was no big deal. But for some guys, a lot of other guys, when that first exposure happens, it's like, oh, I think I found the answer. And then it never leaves from there, because you have these feelings that rise up, and then porn is the answer. And so going forward, I become a Christian very shortly thereafter, and I think, hey, I think I've found the way, the connection that I need, the community that I need to be able to leave this behind. But I would go through seasons at that time where it would disappear for a little while, and then it would come back. And it would disappear for a little while, and then it would come back. But I got really active in my church youth group. I got active in my high school Christian group, and I was leading fellowship groups, and sometimes I'd lead worship with my guitar, and just, it was I was a
lot of guilt.
Oh yeah. Oh, of course. Every time I would engage in anything of this nature, I would feel guilty. And then I would tell some of my Christian brothers that I'm having an issue with this, and most of the time they would have grace for me, but the rest of it, they would just look at me like a dog looking at a television set. They just didn't know what to do. They didn't have the tools. No one had the tools to be able to help me leave this forever.
Do you think they were struggling with their own shame and guilt from that?
Oh, yeah, sure. So most of them were probably having the same problem, and so they were ill-equipped. And then you're in a church, and you're in a church environment where discussing this, most of the time there was a desire to make it sound like you could just pray for someone and it would go away. Like there would be a miraculous removal of this thing. And I think that speaks to this thing that I'm really learning about recently called spiritual bypass. And that term, I may use it wrong here because I'm not an expert, but I think the spiritual bypass is where we, I'd liken it to the story of the paralytic who was lowered into be healed by Jesus. It's telling the paralytic on the ground, he's looking at you and say, hey, Jesus is 3 blocks away. Just go over there to Zebedee's house and he'll probably heal you. Just go. Instead of lifting him up off the ground, ripping open some guy's roof and lowering him in, right? The spiritual bypass is me giving you the answer, right? Yeah. Stop it, right? That's the answer. But the true brother in Christ is going to be the one who picks you up off the pallet with 3 of his buddies and rips open some guy's roof without permission to lower you to Jesus and probably burning their hands on the ropes while they do it. It's a messy business. And so I think there's a sense amongst us brothers that there's a messy business on the other side of this question, and they don't know what to do with the messiness of it. So they want it to be clean. So let's just pray and move on. So
I think some of that has to do with what's going on with them. What's interesting about your story is the very first night I got drunk, I was 10 years old, actually felt the effects of alcohol on me, is I had the exact same reaction where I had found the promised land. Like I told my friends that night, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like it solved whatever was wrong with me internally, spiritually. It was the medicine that I didn't even know existed in that sense. And I mean, literally the next morning went and did it. I was 10 years old, so I did a beer run and started drinking.
Wow.
So I mean, I relate with it big time with that. It was almost like magic, I would say, in that sense.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is these initial experiences that we have, that I had, right? The initial experiences that I had were so catalyzing in my life that it was very difficult to overcome. Mm-hmm. And it kind of stopped certain, I'm learning now that it stopped certain areas of growth in my life. And these tools, I call them tools or ways of reacting to the world, I picked up when I was 12. I continued to act like a 12-year-old for the rest of my life. And that's one of the reasons why when I started getting free in my 50s, that I began to realize, man, I've really been approaching the world like a 12-year-old in a lot of these ways.
Yeah, they say that emotional development, this is a saying, I don't know how true it is, but emotional development stops when you begin your addiction or whatever. Does. And so, I mean, I think at least there's some truth to it, because I mean, it's when you're in that active addiction, it's preventing you from growing emotionally. And so, like, how long you're in there.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, and it kind of explains road rage and some of the men you meet, right? I think and once you get this key in your head, you're like, now I see why these guys are acting this way, right? And so back to the story, I get married, so I go, I meet my wife, a wonderful woman. I'm still married to her 38 years later. And I marry her in 1987, and I love her to death. Her name's Renee, and she. I thought that when I got married that was going to fix it. Now, you're going to hear every single guy say that, right? Mm-hmm. And that didn't fix it. Actually, marriage reveals more. It reveals more of what's going on than it does fixing things. Actually, it fixes nothing. It actually adds more. And so, but because of the happy time of marriage and things like that, this kind of waned. And during college, it kind of waned and went away. I was involved in a lot of church things, and that just helped me to be able to kind of avoid it. And so I thought it was gone. And then I joined the military, which is a perfect place for a guy who deals with unwanted sexual behavior. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. It's actually really a bad place to be, especially because I graduated from college and went to navigator training in California with my wife, and then I started flying B-52s. So that meant time away, hotels, pay-per-view, that kind of thing. So that became a feature of my being away. Now here I am trying to be this really strong Christian in the middle of all that, and then I have this other life where I'm in hotels, and it's crazy, some of the rituals and things you have. We had a guy in one of my groups that said he was in this situation where he just took the TV off the wall, walked down to the front desk and gave him the TV. And they're like, you could just unplug it. He goes, that doesn't work for me. And I agree. I totally see that. I totally see me unplugging the TV and putting the plug back in, undoing the cable and putting the cable back in. It's.
Were you trying to fight it at that time?
Oh yeah, I'm always trying to fight it, because I'm presenting this image as a good Christian guy. Guys would be like, hey, we're going to Hooters tonight. And I'm like, I don't do that. I'm not going to go there. And they're like, come on, the whole crew's going, Steve. And I'm like, no, I'll just stay in my hotel room, And that public persona and hypocrisy of what was going on in my personal life was starting to generate a lot of pain. I think initially when this thing is going on in my life, I had a really good way of controlling, the aspects of it, thinking I could kind of keep it contained. It eventually just becomes impossible to contain. But I think there's an illusion that we can control it, that we can keep it quiet, that it can be a secret that nobody knows. And so I would go for years with porn, and it would just come and go. And, in those days, it wasn't such a big deal. And I was in the B-52s for a while and then transitioned over to C-130s. Now, C-130s had a lot more TDYs. That's going, TDY is temporary duty. So most of my weekends were gone. And I was going here or there and staying in hotel rooms all the time. So this problem kept going. It kept going.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it'd be worse and sometimes it'd be less.
Did you find it progressing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So it progressed because, we went from pay-per-view to VCR tapes to DVDs to, and then once the internet kicked in, then it just was like whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted it, right? Mm-hmm. So that really made it worse. And then the way that they market it now, it's so like tailored to what you want. And so the big things that one of the things I don't want to miss was that I was a part of a thing at Fairchild Air Force Base. There was a week there where there was a mass shooting and a bomber crash. And I was a part of both of those in that week. And that formed the basis of a lot of the PTSD, my military PTSD, that week. And that, because of the flying aspect of my career, that got rug swept. I would have liked to have gone seen a counselor to try to resolve some of that stuff. But they're like, oh, you can go to a counselor, but you got to come off flying. And I was like, okay, job or mental health.
I've heard that a lot, that if you try and get help while you're in active duty, like it's going to screw your career.
Yes. Back then, especially because in B-52s, there was a thing called PRP. So it's called Personal Reliability Program because B-52s are a nuclear bomber, right? So they're a nuclear bomber force. So if you were a part of that crew, you had to be on what's on PRP. And if you went to see a counselor, you have to report that, period. And then you'd be off PRP, which means you can't fly. So even though I left the B-52s right after the crash, I left the B-52s, went to C-130s, that mindset still stayed with me. Can't talk about this. Can't do anything about it. So I just stuffed it and just kept moving. Same
message you got from your dad.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's just, you just keep building this stuff up, and it just doesn't help. And so I think the biggest thing that happened was I deployed to Qatar with C-130s in 2011. And this is when things got really bad. And I was over there and I was watching a lot of porn while I was deployed. And I was beginning to hear things from my wife back home that let me know that things were not going well. Things in our marriage, things were not going well. So I come home from this deployment and my marriage is just shambles. I lost my job. At this point, I'm a reservist. So I had two jobs. I was flying in the reserves in Atlanta, C-130s, and then I was also working for Lockheed Martin as a simulator instructor. And I lost both those jobs. I had one full-time job where I was working on active duty orders at Dobbins, and this is in Atlanta, and I lost my job there. Those active duty orders ended, and I wanted to go back to Lockheed, and they told me that I got let go. So I lost both my jobs. So I had two full-time jobs that turned into a part-time job. And so I started looking around, and that's when I found the 5th Special Operations Squadron here in Herbert.
Okay.
And they brought me down here to fly C-130s. And I knew they'd have a lot of orders. So I came down here and I was working full-time for them. And then they told me that the plane that I was brought down and hired to do was going away, the C-130. So then they said, would you like to fly the U-28? So that's how I wound up learning the U-28.
It's the U-28.
It's Draco. And it's a It's a small airplane.
Okay. Is there some things that are secretive about it?
Yeah, I can't
share?
really go into too much about what it does.
Is it a lot more difficult to fly than?
Yeah, so I was in C-130s. I was working off of 1980s technology, and I jumped into this plane where it was 2012 Windows. I mean, straight up Windows, and everything was graphic user interfaces and all of these. It was a quantum leap for me. I'm 45, and I'm trying to learn all this stuff, and it was hard. And on top of that, my marriage is falling apart. I've moved here to Florida, and I'm under so much stress because reserves are a little different. If I lost this job, if I didn't make it through that school, I'd be bankrupt. I wouldn't have any money. I just have no job. I have nowhere to go. And so I go through this school, which was a complete pressure cooker. I had never experienced anything like it. The soft forces are totally different than regular Air Force. Mm-hmm. And so suffice to say, I graduated on a Wednesday morning around 3 o'clock in the morning for my basic training in U-28s. And I was walking out to an airplane on Monday in Afghanistan for my first combat mission.
Oh, wow.
So the amount of stress, so my marriage is falling apart. I'm dealing with a full-on addiction at this point. Mm-hmm. And I'm thrown into combat. So, yeah. And so those I did two deployments with the U-28, 70 days on, 30 days home, 70 days on. So I did two deployments, combat deployments in Afghanistan. And during that time, though, this thing had gone from, like I would call it, like an unwanted sexual behavior to a full-on addiction. It was not. I just kind of gave up after 2011. I finally said I can't live with this hypocrisy anymore. I'm just going to give in. I still went to church, but I was not involved.
Yeah.
And so then, after I did a few things more with the Air Force, I retired in 2017. Got a job overseas as a contractor where I was a site manager in Iraq, and I spent a couple of years in Iraq, and then I switched companies with Northrop Grumman and went to did stuff in Afghanistan.
Hey, what's up, guys? If you've been following me for a while, you know I'm a huge fan and supporter of Firecracker Farm. Alex, the owner, is not only an incredible human being, but he makes an incredible product, and that is why we could not be happier that they are sponsoring the Shoot Me Straight podcast. Each guest, when they come in, will get a sample of Firecracker Farm so they can take it back and enjoy, and I can tell you, to each person that we've given it to, they have not been disappointed. You can put these, put this salt on your favorite food, favorite beverage. I've even seen people put it in their coffee. They love it. There's an assortment of heat, so if you don't like it too hot, they definitely have that taken care of with some mild flavors. And then it goes all the way to extreme heat if you like to sweat. So if you guys are interested in purchasing some, go to firecracker.farm. All right, thank you for listening, and God bless.
Do you think the stress, compounded your addiction? Yeah.
Oh yeah. So the coping mechanism starts to break down, starts to not work anymore, and so you have to do more and more things to feed it. And so I come back, and I'm going to. My wife had switched churches on us while I was gone, so I came back and I started going to a church here in the local area, Destiny, which I really love that church, and I love the people there, and I began to really get into what I call the try harder message. And the try harder message is pray, read your Bible, lead groups, serve in the church. That those things by themselves will free you. And so those things coupled with I'm telling no one about what's going on in my life. Mm-hmm. I'm leading marriage classes. Mm-hmm. And I'm fully involved in compulsive sexual behavior at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that hypocrisy is so, it began to break me down mentally. And I think that's an unseen thing in this, that depression, anxiety, I'd wake up in the morning just feeling dread every day and just feeling horrible about myself. I hated myself. And so
It's that duplicity.
yeah, oh yeah, the duplicity. And it begins to break you down. I think it just keeps breaking you down. So then what happened was I finally had enough of this. So I went to talk to one of the pastors, and he said, well, there's this class called the Conquer Series, and there's a guy who's leading. He's over there. Go talk to him. So I go over to talk to this guy, and I'm talking to him, and I say, boy, I'm in big trouble. I need help. Prior to that, I do want to mention, I had approached a couple of men in our church, and I love these guys. That they kind of did the same thing. They said, well, we're going to hold you accountable. I was like, okay, great. So each week, come back and tell us how you're doing. Okay. So I come back the next week and go, I relapsed. And they're like, well, okay, we'll pray for you. And so next week, come back. I relapsed. And they're like, well, okay, next week, come back. I relapsed. And I'm like, wow. They started to get frustrated. And I'm like, I'm going to stop talking to these guys because it's not going to go any further than that. Yeah. So they didn't know what to do.
Do you think that works on some people?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think it works on anybody. I think what needs to happen here, and you'll hear it in my story, you need to meet a person who has grace for you. Now, I think most Christian men are good with that. I think they can show grace. What you need is the competency. And that's part of what has developed in my life is the ability to show people the path, that there's a path. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy one, but there's a path. So here's how I found my path. So I tell this guy, hey, I'd like to join your group. I really need this. He goes, well, have you ever led groups before? I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, oh, great. Would you like to co-lead? I'm like, okay. And he goes, hey, and do you have a place to meet? I'm like, my house? Great. So now I'll have to kick my wife out. So she wasn't totally aware of what was going on. So kick my wife out of the house for this. And then he says, oh, and by the way, this weekend is the expo at our church. Would you be willing to stand at the table and represent our group? Okay. That's a lot to ask. It was very hard. But, I was so frustrated at this point. I guess I was just willing to do anything. Mm-hmm. Wasn't really willing to tell my story to anyone and wasn't really willing to share the damage that had been going on in my life. So I stood there like a doofus at this expo. And then we had the meeting at my house on the first night, and I'm thinking, this is going to fix it. This group is going to fix it. The Conquer series is awesome. Mm-hmm. I still lead it today. But I wound up leading those first two by myself at my house.
And you hadn't even been through it yet.
No. I was probably the worst person to be leading this in the panhandle of Florida. I think I was. I think Corey would tell you that.
Yeah.
And so on the second night, this guy, Corey, is sitting next to me, and he says, you heard me tell my story. The other guys were confessing to some things. And I said, I'm the worst of the bunch, and I'm leading this group. And Corey said, you should give me a call. And so it was February 7th of 2022 that I am sitting on my couch, and I'm dialing a number that I shouldn't be dialing. Mm-hmm. I get about halfway through it, and I hear this little voice say, you should give Corey a call. So I called him. And he said to me, okay, Steve, what you been up to? I said, well, I'm doing a little this and a little that. And he goes, no, tell me what you're doing. I said, okay, fine. At this point, I was so jaded, hopeless. I figured, what's good? What good is it? Who cares? Okay, fine. So I told him everything. It's not the worst I've heard. You're going to be okay, man. He said, just send me a text every day of 3 things you're grateful for, and I've got a group for you to attend on Wednesday. Come with me. So I went to Sex Addicts Anonymous, 12-step program, and that's where I began to find my answers. I've been sober.
Was that your first path that you saw? Because when I think of a path, it's with the Lord, but man, for me as a bad drug addict, I think of, it gave me a specific path, like doing the 12 steps.
Yes. So it was the 12-step program, and that Corey became my sponsor, and he led me through the 12 steps. Now I'm to this day I'm on step 8, but it's been a slow process of going through the steps. I've done a bunch of other things.
Sure.
And those early days, I remember just not really having my head on straight, and called Corey a lot, and he's a good brother, and he helped me. So the day of February 7th, 2022 is the day of my sobriety. That's when I've been sober ever since that. Now a lot of Christian guys will all cheer and applaud, and I'm like, well, I need to put a caveat on that. That meant a day-by-day journey from there, right? So that the picture didn't look like God just delivered me. It looked like I stopped. I stopped on February 7th, 2022. That's where I stopped. And then I started something else. And then to add to the story, about 3 or 4 months later, Corey calls me and says that there's this place called Heart to Heart in Colorado where you can do a 5-day marriage intensive, and they have an opening in August. I said, hey, thanks for that information. He says, I don't think you heard what I said. Okay, Corey. So I took my wife out to this Heart to Heart, and that's where I did my disclosure with my wife, and that's where she began her healing journey. That was August of 2022.
Explain disclosure.
Sure.
Somewhat.
So there's just 2 things that will bring a man. One thing that'll typically brings a man into this world is usually he gets discovered. That's the most painful and most difficult and it's painful for you, it's painful for the wife and your family when discovery happens. Discovery is what happens at a Coldplay concert. That's discovery. Disclosure is what we try to encourage men to do in this situation where their wife may have a sense about what they're doing, but they're not totally aware. So then we encourage them to do a therapeutic disclosure, which means you get a therapist to gather the information that is necessary to provide your spouse with the information she needs to begin her healing journey. This is not to protect the guy. This is to try not to do what we call a staggered disclosure, which is breadcrumbs for over a long period of time, just destroying trust, but also just destroying her. It's a terrible, terrible thing to do. So
Breadcrumbs would be like, oh yeah, hey, I looked at porn, and then they're like, oh yeah, then I got a dirty massage, or I cheated, I went and got hookers or whatever. Yeah, and they string it out to try to in the guy's mind, it's trying to soften the blow. Really, he's trying to cover his butt. But the way that the spouses receive this, and if you get more into the partner betrayal trauma, this is the most traumatic thing you can do. This is the most traumatic way you can do it. It's a staggered disclosure. So it's better to bring your spouse into a therapeutic setting where the therapist can, I'm not trying to say control the story, but give her what she needs to know the truth. Give you the opportunity to know that you walked away from this thing honest. That's the key. And then the recovery can begin. If she so chooses, she can choose that path. How important is that? So I think about it when I was in rehabs. I don't remember which one it was, but one or multiple of them. I went through 4 of them, but 1 or 2 of them, we did a deal where it's sit down and meet to share everything I've been doing.
Yes.
It's easier, I think, probably with drugs and alcohol. It's like, okay, I've been doing cocaine, I've been doing, but still it was a shock to family.
Yes.
They're like, you've been doing what? Like, this was so much worse than we thought it was. And I guess in my mind, I thought, I figured you assumed all that, like that you knew most of this, but for them it was a big shock.
Yeah, this was a very big shock for my wife.
Yeah.
And in that moment when what my behaviors were laid out in front of her. But the thing that I think was really a blessing was I brought her to a place where for 5 days they could help her and be sensitive to the pain she was going through. And so, and then I barely saw her that week. And we're doing a lot better now. Yeah. It's just, disclosure is a very difficult topic, which is, we'll talk about it when it comes to the conference coming up, but it is imperative that the betrayed spouse really be given the bulk of the help in this. We get help through, there's a lot of help for us on this side we got groups and things we can go to, and there's materials and things like that. There's not a whole lot for the betrayed spouse.
Is that why y'all do it that way? So that they have support? Otherwise, like if you just drop a bombshell on someone and say, hey, I've been doing all these different things.
Yeah, we call it backing up a dump truck of hate. Yeah, and you don't want to really back up a dump truck of hate. Now, James 5:16 in the Bible talks about confessing our sins one to another, that you may be healed. So there's a healing in this confession. So this disclosure, it's very hard to see it in the moment, but it's actually a victory. But it's a bloody victory. It's a painful victory. It's one that takes years to go back and see that it was a victory. It takes a long time to get there. I think, my wife and I may be at the point where we're beginning to see that it was a victory rather than this horrible thing. It was horrible. It was difficult. And I didn't want to do it. So how did I go from
You didn't want to do that?
Oh, heck no. Yeah. But how did I go from a guy who said, I'm telling nobody about this, I want to die with my secrets, to a guy who's on a podcast with you now, just sharing my secrets to whoever's listening? It's been a transformation journey of being on this path. So my wife will say that in October of that same year, 2022, that I was sitting in my living room, and she said it was like my head exploded. I just began to just yell and just rant and rave about something. And she heard what I was saying, and it had to do with the fact that it bothered me that I had to go outside the church to find my healing. And I thought this shouldn't be happening. This is something that should be different. I should have been able to find it. I was looking for it for like 5 years, and I should have been able to find it. And so then I just thought that's where this vision began to develop in me, to get involved in groups associated with the church. And I was at a 12-step program. I told a guy about what I was thinking about. He says, don't do it. This is not going to work. They won't accept you. I said, wow, he goes, no, you're going to fail. I'm like, well, but I knew in my heart, and I knew from the Lord at that point, that this is what I was called to do. So we started doing groups at our church, and they opened the door for us to do groups. And then eventually we started, we went from that, and then I eventually became aware of Pure Desire. And that's who we do groups with now. And they're really awesome. And I know I've kind of skipped forward kind of fast, but part of, your 12 steps, like your 12 step is that, having had a spiritual awakening, and I really had that spiritual awakening as I was working on step 4. Having had a spiritual awakening, we carry the message to those who still suffer. So I just became overwhelmed with how many people have this issue. So we know statistically, I've got a Barna study sitting right next to me, that statistically, it's like 7 out of 10 men in the church deal with this problem.
Wow.
1 in 5 pastors deal with this problem. So it's pervasive. And one of the big statistics is 84% of reported porn users say they don't have anyone in their life helping them to avoid it. 84% of them. So 7 out of 10, 84% of them have no help. And it just breaks my heart, because I was one of those guys. And so I never want to forget what it felt like to want to get out and not know where to go. That's not an indictment on the church at all. That's an indictment on just a topic that that it's difficult to know what to do.
Do you think some of that is because if you're a pastor of a church, one, it's a shameful topic,
Yes.
but two, they don't have a really good solution for it or a path to give members that come up and say, hey, I'm struggling with porn, or I'm struggling with whatever else, and unwanted sexual behavior. What do I do?
I think they have an intuitive sense that this is not a one and done kind of thing. That, that I'm sure pastors who are listening to this, you've got the betrayed spouse that comes in, tells you that she caught her husband on social media chatting with another woman or something like that, and that the whole family's being blown apart, and it's just this giant, messy thing. And it's hard to sort the forest from the trees during those early days in this thing, and what to do. Well, maybe a counselor can fix it. Well, now my concern with that is you're kind of outsourcing. It's like, you're too much for us. But the training in this is non-existent for most pastors. So I don't want to speak for them. I'd love to have one of them speak, but it's a difficult area. And how do you address it? You mean, okay, everyone bow your head, close your eyes, raise your hands if you deal with porn. That's not going to work.
It's the Southern Baptist way.
Well, and what happens is now you've just basically opened the cancer ward. So there's an intuitive sense that this is a bigger problem than like a one and done thing. It's a thing that's going to take a while, and you would be correct. It takes 3 to 5 years from the moment a guy joins the path with us to the place where he could probably be living his best life. It's like 3 to 5 years. So it's not an easy, simple 8-week class or anything like that. It's a consistent path, and I've been walking it now for 3 years. And so that's my goal, and that's what the Lord has laid on my heart as a vision, is to bring this as a feature of the church. So I'm not approaching pastors saying, here's a bright, shiny idea for you to do. It's, here's a bright, shiny idea that I'm willing to do, that I'm willing to help with. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to bring this about and make it a feature. And so that when guys do identify, whenever they're willing to, they can come to one of these groups and they can find hope, they can find healing, and they can find life. And there's a good chance their marriage will be restored. Not always. The difficulty of the path is this, and I think it goes for all addicts. There's consequences of coming out and admitting that you have a problem. There's consequences, and you're not going to escape them. And the problem is if you come out ahead of being discovered, that means that you can have a more gentle path, like I did, into this thing than being on a jumbotron at a Coldplay concert, because God will do that to you. He's not mocked. A man will reap what he sows, and there will be a point in your life, and I don't know if you experience this, where God's like, okay, I've had enough. I've had enough of the injury and the hurt that you're causing to all these people. I'm going to out you. And that's the most painful thing. And we get a lot of guys in our group that have been through that. I wish that they take a different choice. I don't know. Sometimes I think it's a very limited number that will make that decision to cross over before being discovered.
But they have to want it, right? I mean, just with a 12 steps stuff. I mean, I ran addiction homes for years. You have parents that would put their kid in there, and the kid didn't want it. He didn't want to stay sober. He didn't want to quit. He wanted the consequences to stop. He wanted his parents to keep giving him money and supporting him. And so in a sense, a lot of what that was just, it was like a softer consequence in some ways for them. And sometimes they would come to the realization while they were in there that they actually did want it, that they were tired, and sometimes there was change. But then a lot of times, kids that just did not want it, and once they got out, they just go right back to it.
Yeah, so Corey told me early on, there's 2 things you need to be successful: a willingness to do whatever it takes, and rigorous honesty. And so when I encounter a guy that'll say, yeah, I'd love to come to group. I'm like, okay, there's a commitment with this. And they go, well, I don't know if I can make it. I'm like, okay. And I'm almost like, I'm starting to like unplug things and say, I'm not doing this with you. Because it's...
They're just not ready or willing.
You're not ready. You need more time in the oven, brother.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it takes to get a guy to say that I'll do whatever it takes.
Mm-hmm.
I got one guy who's, he was like, well, it's the first group, and I'd like to come, but, it's really asking a lot of my wife to watch the kids for me to go do this. I'm like, uh-huh. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, man. Why do I care?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, huh? I'm like, yeah, why should I care? I mean, I've got guys whose wives will tell them, it's our anniversary. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll skip group. You're like, no, you won't. You're going to group. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me that it's too much for your wife to watch your kids while you go to group.
You see that as just an excuse.
It's an excuse.
Yeah.
But he eventually realized what I was trying to tell him in that moment. He went, oh, I see it. Okay, I'll be there. I'm coming. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I said, either you do whatever it takes or it's not. Coming to group is one of those things.
Yeah, one thing I think of is I was in a weird way, I see it blessed that, by the time I was 18, I got sober at 18.
Oh, wow.
And, it was 4 rehabs, like 15 arrests. Like I was busy during those early years. And so like, I see it as such a blessing of getting it young, because one of the worst things is all of a sudden, 20s, 30s, 40s, and it's like all that time you've prolonged something that you could have started now and be at such a healthy, but like you actually, in a weird way, I picture my life as starting at 18 in a weird way. It's like that's where really life began.
Imagine starting it at 57.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's better than later even, but still, like you'd spend so many years wasting time before you said, okay, I'm going to have the courage to just, at those moments. Because there was probably moments before that where you were like, I need to get clean about this. I need to find a solution, And it stinks that the church isn't really equipped or has a path. I would always say, I mean, even if I get calls all the time from people in church saying, hey, I have an addict, I have an alcoholic, and then pushing them to me. I think of, even if they don't know, I mean, at least the 12 steps is a path.
It is.
And it works.
It's effective.
Yeah.
And I do want to share a scripture here, and then I'd like to talk about your desire, if that's cool.
Yep.
So Isaiah 58, 8 and 12, it says, then your salvation will come like the dawn, and your wounds will quickly heal. Your godliness will lead you forward, and the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind. And you will be known as a rebuilder of walls and a restorer of homes. And so if I go back over that, my salvation came like the dawn. And it was in that moment when Corey said, oh, man, you're not that bad. He says, I've heard worse. And I thought I was the worst. I was alone, and I thought I was the worst. I thought there was no one worse than me. And my wounds began to quickly heal. It took like 8 months, but it began to heal. And then it talks about my godliness will lead me forward as I began to become more involved in obedience to Christ. And I committed myself to that. That happened almost automatically. I didn't think about, I'm going to obey today. It just began to happen. And my godliness began to lead me forward. And I began to notice that the glory of the Lord was protecting me from behind. There was a lot of things from my past that could have just come crawling up on me, and they didn't. He protected me. That's weird. Why would he protect me? But he does. And then I wanted to become a rebuilder of homes. And that's really what this is about. So I help men walk away from this, but then inadvertently, as a result, I'm helping their families too. that this would end in their generation, that this would stop in their lives. So turn one man around, you turn a family around. So that's my passion. That's my goal. And so the tool that I found to help me with that was really helpful with Pure Desire. And the reason why I like Pure Desire, it's not just some pastor who wrote a book, and God bless you pastors who write books, but in my sense is if you're going to get sober, the 12-step program is the way to go. And so the guy who coined the term sex addiction and brought the 12 steps into Sex Addicts Anonymous is a guy named Patrick Carnes. So Dr. Ted Roberts, who was the founder of Pure Desire Ministries, Vietnam-era Marine fighter pilot. Wow, he checks all the boxes, I tell you. As he was studying for his PhD as a minister, he studied under Carnes. And he asked Carnes permission to take his work and adopt it into a biblical framework. So it's clinically informed Carnes, biblically based Roberts. And so it's designed for the church. We don't want to be independent from the church. It's for the church. And it's amazing that they cover the compulsive sexual behavior side for those that are dealing with compulsive sexual behavior. For men and women, too. They have resources for that. They have resources for the betrayed spouse. They have resources for parents on how to talk to their kids about sex. They have resources for youth. So it's not being presented as, hey, I've got a little book for your guys to read. It's a comprehensive system that addresses the entire life cycle of this thing in your church, which is beautiful. So it's all, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Pure Desire, now they partner with churches and will start like groups inside the church.
Yes. You just need a guy like me to lead it, right? So that's what I've been doing, and I'm furthering their cause. And one of the things we're doing is they're based out of Oregon and they're moving to Nashville, and they're, Dr. Ted Roberts is getting on in years, and so he's no longer the head of Pure Desire. It's a guy named Nick Stumbo, and Nick is coming here for a conference October 10th and 11th, and that'll be an awesome opportunity for any pastor who's listening to go and get equipped in this area. I'm really excited about this conference. We're also bringing in a PhD psychologist named Janice Cottle, and she's worked in the VA hospitals for a long time, counseling vets, especially Vietnam vets. She'll be the only woman at the conference, but believe me, there's nothing a guy could tell her that she hasn't heard. But she's there with us. She's especially skilled in the area of disclosures. So a lot of guys have questions about what's disclosure look like. She's a good person to talk to. She'll be at the conference, and she's also going to speak. So there'll be opportunities in the conference to not just hear speakers, but to actually get time just kind of chatting with them, and it'll be really a good opportunity.
What if a guy wanted to go, but he said, how would he tell his wife, hey, I'm going to a sex conference or unwanted sexual behavior conference?
Yeah. Why are you going to that conference? Do you have an issue? Boy, this is a great conversation. So you'd have to self-identify before you even came. And that's not what it is. So the way that we would say, the way that I would use it and for marketing this thing or talking about this thing to your wife is, have you noticed in society, our culture, that unwanted sexual behavior is on the rise or on the decrease? Or sexual brokenness, is it on the rise or is it on the decrease? I think the answer, most people would say, yeah, it seems like it's growing. Just think about AI. I don't even want to think about where AI is going to take us in this area. Okay, do you feel prepared to educate your children, your grandchildren, be helpful to those in your church and your community that may have gotten caught in this thing? If you don't have those tools, we're having national level leaders come in to talk about equipping people to be able to help those around them with this issue. So come to this conference, and you could say, I'm here for a friend. And that allows you to look at your wife and say, oh, yeah, this is about pornography and things like that, but it's not about my issue. It's about helping families and churches, and we're going to be discussing sexual purity and things like that.
I mean, with our kids.
With our kids, yeah. And
that makes sense.
And you go back to that beginning of my story where I talked about, I love my dad. He's still alive and he's still with us, and he just recently turned 93, and I love him to death. But he didn't have the tools. Mm-hmm. So I don't have any blame for those people in my past, because I take responsibility for all the things that I've done. That's part of this journey, is taking responsibility for the things that you've done. But there's these opportunities where your children will approach you on these difficult topics. And if you have a sense of wholeness in your own life, you can speak from that wholeness to them. If you're dealing with compulsive sexual behavior in your own life, you're going to be very addled in your ability to help your children.
Yeah. And
time is ticking. If you got young kids, or you got teenagers, or I've got kids in their 20s and 30s, time is ticking. But there's a really great scripture that says that, let's see if I can find it. That God will restore the years that the locust has eaten. Mm. And Joel chapter 2, verse 25, I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten. So it's always a chance. Everything can be redeemed. It's never too far gone. And so no matter how old your children are or your grandchildren, there's still an opportunity there to learn age-appropriate methods of helping them to share.
No.
And I was at a conference or a breakfast recently, and one of our guys, Bruce, was talking about a situation he became aware of a young girl, I think she was like 13, that was on TikTok. And she was, I hope I'm okay sharing the story, but she was on TikTok, and some guy that was kind of popular on TikTok began to take notice of her. And she, wow, that's pretty exciting, Mm-hmm. And then it turned into send me naked pictures. Well, she was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And this person said, I know where you live. I know who your parents are. I know the name of your dog. I'm going to come kill them all. And so then I guess she gave in. And then it wasn't like 3 or 4 years later before she finally told someone what had happened there. Mm. So this kind of blackmail, disclosure, things like that is going on. And this guy Bruce was saying the statistic is parents over the lifetime of a child will spend 41 minutes over their whole lifetime discussing internet safety. 41 minutes. It's like trying to stem a flood with a Q-tip. It's not sufficient. The attack is so big, and the response is so light. Hmm. And sometimes I just weep, and inside my spirit over how much damage is being done, and it's just flying under the radar. Hmm. We have I don't know if I mentioned those statistics yet, that from the Barna study where they talked to youth pastors. There's a Barna study that was done by Pure Desire. It's called Beyond the Porn Phenomenon. It's a recent updated numbers. They asked youth pastors, where should teens learn sex, about sexual education? Where should they learn about it? And the ideal. What's your ideal? And the answer was 89% was for dad, 88% was for mom, and 62% was for church and pastors. That's what would be ideal. That's where they should learn it. I think it's great that dad edged out mom by 1% in this survey. That's 200 youth pastors. Hmm. And then they asked them, what are you actually observing? This is where the rubber meets the road. 3% dad, 4% mom, and 1% pastors. So it's completely inadequate. And then when you go down the line to what are they actually witnessing? Let's see here. Social media, 69%, pornography, 56%, and friends, 69%.
Wow.
Friends, pornography, and social media is where they're learning about their sexuality. And being a safe place for your kids to be able to express what's going on in this world with AI and phones and internet and pornography and what their friends are telling them and social media. It's, I don't know. You wouldn't let your kid play with a blowtorch, but that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a difficult thing. So that motivation to come to the conference would be that motivation to learn what it takes to be able to be an effective parent, member of the church, leader, man of valor. So it's called the Men of Valor conference, and it's October 10th and 11th.
How do people sign up for that?
So you go to Men of Valor Ticket Bud.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just type in Men of Valor, you're not going to get it. Men of Valor Ticket Bud, and that's where you'll find us.
.com?
Yeah, I think
Or
it's
just Google search it?
Yeah, just Google search Men of Valor Ticket Bud.
Okay.
And you'll find us. And then if you want to know more, click on the little red banner and it'll open it up and you'll see a video in there from Corey and some of the guys that are involved in this. And we're going to have these national speakers. We're going to have good food, and it's not that expensive. And the prices go up on the 12th of September, but right now it's $95, so it's not that expensive.
Okay. And then if someone was listening to this and you're speaking their story and they want help and want to reach you, is there a way to reach you directly?
Yeah, if you include my phone number in the show notes, I'm totally cool with that.
Okay.
And they could call me directly. Now, I screen my calls because I get calls, spam calls, just like everybody else. So just if you get my voicemail, leave a message. Say, hey, I'm calling because you're on the podcast. I'll call you right back.
Okay.
You know, I'm just an old, disabled, retired vet. And that's something that I really hadn't mentioned yet, was that I didn't discover my PTSD till I got sober.
Huh.
You can't really figure out what you're medicating. If you're medicating something, you can't find out you got an issue. And I didn't realize I had a big issue. I had a big issue with PTSD. And that actually was a reason why at a certain point I had to give Corey all of my guns.
Yeah.
For about a year and a half.
Seriously.
He had all my guns. Yeah. That's how close it was. I was probably 3 or 4 weeks from suicide. I would have been another one of those old vets that you heard about that just offed himself.
We've heard a lot of them.
Well, and so that I don't know if there's a correlation between compulsive sexual behavior and addiction and suicide in veterans. I don't know if anyone's made that case.
I'm sure between all sorts of addictions and suicide and PTSD.
Well, the addiction is addictions are not a bad problem. They're a bad solution.
Exactly.
Yeah, you've probably heard that before.
Yeah.
So the question is what am I trying to resolve?
Yeah.
You can't discover that until you get sober.
Yeah.
So once you've been sober for about 6 months, and you probably experienced this, that's when you begin to start to see God show you the reasons why this was in your life in the first place.
Yeah.
And then that's what you work on. That's what we work on. Most people think we're telling stories about porn all the time. That is not what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're drilling down to these emotional things. And these
Yeah, like it
reasons.
says in the big book, the causes.
You got to find them. And what I love about the process that we do in the Pure Desire stuff is we allow the Holy Spirit to gently reveal these things rather than trying to rip them out with a crowbar. He's gentle. And then what I've learned in this process is that gentle process, that's the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's not done with me, even though I just turned 60 yesterday. I believe that the journey forward is a hopeful one.
Yeah.
I live in hope. I live in serenity. I live in peace. I live in freedom. I'm redeemed, and I know that I'm redeemed by a Redeemer who loves me and cares for me, and He's carrying me along this journey, and I don't have to kick and scream and make things happen. It's just everything is slowed down, and everything's working better as I've slowed down.
Yeah. Imagine at 57 if you did not get honest and you held that to the grave or ended up off it. Like, I mean, how different is your life now? I mean, how much more free and
I wake up every day and I love what I do. I don't, there is no time during the week that I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. It's either work on me or help others. And that's pretty much it. That's what, and it's my passion. It's what I want to do. And it's something that I am so filled with joy and peace. And it sounds all like I'm, I don't know, selling something. It's hard to express where I was to where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And I never want to lose the filter that I had. I'll be sitting in church listening to men's meetings and stuff. Sometimes I'll be sitting there going, oh, this is great. And then I'll put that filter on. How would I have heard this 4 years ago? And I begin to think, is there a man in this room who's hearing it that way? And I'm like, help me find him. Help him find me.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this and that's your story, he wants you to reach out and give him a call, leave him a message, and see how many people you can help this side of heaven.
Many as we can. I can't tell you that it's going to be an easy road. It's not. It's not an easy road. It's a hard one. But, it's one where you will really encounter the God in ways that you never even thought was possible. And, I'm reminded of the scripture that talks about the armor of God. And a lot of us military guys and men want to talk about the sword of the Spirit and the shield of faith. And we think, that's really what it's all about. But the first piece of the armor of God, this thing is called the belt of truth. And the belt of truth is what holds all the armor up. All of your armor, your sword, everything's hanging off this belt. Well, could you imagine if you had 85% of a belt around your waist? Where would that belt be? It'd be on the ground. And guess what? All your armor's on the ground. So if you have 85% integrity, if you have a secret, if I'm carrying a secret, my armor's on the ground. I'm helpless in the face of the enemy, and he's attacking my family.
Yeah.
And so anytime I carry a secret, I'm in that position. I lived that way for years. And so all of this attacks on my family and all this stuff that was going on, it was just brutal. And now, once you get that belt of truth and you're able to really wrap that around your waist and you can have confidence. I have confidence now that I'm walking in truth because I'm walking in that rigorous honesty. I don't lie. I don't partner with lies. I don't hang out with lies. I don't live lies. I want nothing to do with lies. Then I know that I've got that belt of truth. It gives me confidence to know that when I say that this stuff works, when I say that this path is real, I say it with confidence. I can tell you that your family will be restored. Maybe not your wife. She may not travel, but your children will probably come back to you. About 99% of the time, there's a scripture that says, I'll restore the hearts of the fathers to the children to their fathers. I've seen that happen over and over again, even in the middle of a divorce. Yeah, there's definite benefits, but there's a lot of hard stuff you got to do.
Yeah, it's a good word.
It is.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, you bet.
Appreciate it. We'll leave links in the description, and we'll leave your phone number.
Yeah.
In the description. So if you need help or it speaks to you, he's telling your story basically, I'd encourage you to reach out to him. Even if he can't help, he'll plug you in some way, form, or fashion.
For sure.
And if you're a pastor or just a husband, even if you really don't struggle with it, maybe you're one of that 3 out of 10, which I even doubt that most of the time. But if you don't struggle at all with any unwanted sexual behavior, but just want to be a good father and get some education for your kids, please attend that conference, October 10th and 11th.
Yep.
And it's Men of Valor Ticket Bud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just Google that and it'll take you
Can
there.
we put the link in the description?
We'll put a link in the description as well. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much. Great to
Out.
be here.
Hey, what's up, guys? So when I'm not doing the podcast, I'm doing a lot of traveling. I put on training all over the country for LE and civilians. I also travel a lot for my nonprofit, the Pipe Hitter Foundation. And as you guys know, travel, going back and forth, can wear you down. But this past year, I have found the antidote. So let me put you on to Aquavita, Destin's premier IV therapy and oxygen bar. This place is owned and operated by a board-certified ER physician with over 23 years of experience, so you know your health is in good hands. Every IV drip is mixed to Board of Pharmacy standards and backed by CDC-level infection control. Whether you're dealing with a fatigue, a hangover, jet lag, stress, immunity issues, or even PMS, they've got custom vitamin drips and boosters tailored just for that. When you go inside, the place is pretty awesome. It puts you at ease right when you go in there. They have comfy lounge chairs, which are perfect for singles or couples, full group sessions. And you can even book the whole space for bachelor or bachelorette parties, race day recovery, or wellness events. While you're in there, they go the extra mile too. They'll give you blankets, sleep masks, earplugs, aromatherapy oxygen, all complimentary. And the best part, every visit includes direct care from the physician and experienced RNs, all focused on fast, safe, and affordable wellness. So if you're in the Destin area, hit up Aquavita. Your body will definitely